therefore it's going to be B. Number 3, I have an odd. Starts down, ends up. And this will be A. Now this one, and in any of these, a quick review is that the degree of the polynomial tells you the max number of zeros. Well, this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. So that matches. It's an odd, right? Starts down, ends up, so it's an odd. There's another clue. And another clue is your turning points. Turning points is equal to the highest degree minus 1. So here, if it's 5 minus 1, I should have 4 turning points. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the last problem, I have an even. Even start up, ends up, but that's like x squared, but this one has a negative or leading coefficient, it's negative. So I need something with down, and that will be this graph, that'll be D. Those were 1-pointed. Alright, so let's do our quiz corrections for the Precalculus quiz number 9, taken December 8th, 2017. So if I didn't grade your paper, you need to recognize what parts you missed based off of what I'm going over. So if you know you missed the question or you didn't understand it, maybe just circle the answer and you don't even know why. That's probably a bad reasoning, bad thinking, not helpful for you. You might want to redo the problem yourself. Does that make sense? So you'll know if you're getting it or not. Question number 1. What number is added to both sides of the equation x squared minus 8x plus 3 equals 0 to solve it by completing the square? Completing the square, you have an equation, b over 2 squared. My b value is negative 8. Half of negative 8 is negative 4, and you square it, you get 16. So in class, I've taught you to write x squared minus 8x plus 16 and minus 16, and then that constant's right there, yes? Mm-hmm. Well, when it says both sides, you can take this negative 16 here and add it over here, and then you have x squared minus 8x plus 16 plus 3 equals 16. So you would have to add 16 to both sides. Number 2, how many real roots does the function given by the graph have? Well, remember, because it's off the x-axis, it has only complex roots. I can ask a more difficult question. Based on this type of graph, let's just say you assume it's quadratic or it's an even, right? How many complex solutions should you have? Well, we know that our complex solutions come in pairs, twos. Does that make sense? So this problem, because it doesn't go through the x-axis, there is no x-intercepts, there's no real solution, so the answer is A. Question number 3. Find the function f whose graph is given below. So what I did is I went through and looked at each of my intercepts. X is equal to a negative 1, 0, 1, and positive 2. Then I noted its multiplicity. If it's shooting through, then it has a multiplicity of 1. Shooting through, multiplicity of 1. Shooting through, multiplicity of 1. There I'm bouncing or kissing. There it has a multiplicity of 2. So then I'm looking for each one of these. If I look here, I have x equals 2, and it has a multiplicity of 2. But this one does not say, if you solve this one, you get x is equal to 1, which would still fit. And then this is negative 1, right? Set it equal to 0. But that one has a multiplicity of 2, so it can be D. A, I have all of those correct. But the only difference between A and C is it's what?
Positive.
It's the end behavior. Because if you multiplied all of these together, you know this graph is an odd, but all odds, like x to the first, start down and up. And this one's reversed, which means you have to change the leading coefficient. And that's why it's C. Question number 4. Match the function with this graph by writing a letter in the blank. When I look at all of these graphs, I'm first probably going to note things such as if it's even or odd. This one is a odd, but it has a negative. So it means odds are going to start this way, start down and up, but because of the leading coefficient, it's going to start down and down. So not this one, not this one. This is a candidate. This one doesn't start up here, so it's going to be C. Number 2 is an even. Evens like x squared. They're going to start up and up. So this could be a possibility. This one, no. This one, no, because both down. Okay, so that x minus 1 and x plus 3 are factors of the polynomial 2x to the third plus 13x squared plus 17x minus 12. What is the third factor? So I wanted to give you a visual or a big picture idea of what's happening. 2x minus 1 is a factor. X plus 3 is a factor. And I need something else. If I multiply these 3, I'm going to get that long polynomial. I can also move this polynomial, or even one of these polynomials, by dividing both sides by x plus 3. Here is a common mistake I've noticed when students have been doing the quiz. The polynomial, or factor of x plus 3, if you set that x equal to 0, x is equal to what? Negative 3. It's not the same. So if this says plus 3, you cannot put plus 3 over here. So if I move this over to the other side, essentially this will cancel, and I need to divide this whole polynomial by x plus 3. Does that make sense? Yeah. I can use synthetic division, so x plus 3 is the same thing as negative 3. The numbers for synthetic division come 2, over here, 2, 13, 17, negative 12. Bring this down, multiply, negative 6, add, 7. Multiply, add, multiply, add. When I have a remainder of 0, that tells me it's a factor. I already know that. But what I need is this information over here. 2, 7, and negative 4 are basically 1 degree less, so that's going to be 2x squared plus 7x minus 4. Now you could use your Xbox method, or you can continue using your synthetic division here. 2, 7, and negative 4. 2x minus 1 is the other factor, and you just set that equal to 0. And you get x to be 1/2. Well, if I use x equals 1/2, multiply, add, multiply, add, then I get 0 as my remainder. So I know that x is equal to negative 3, x is equal to 1/2, and the other one I'm missing is this one, 2x plus 8. Well, this one, if I take out a GCF of 2, I'm left with x plus 4. So if I multiply 2 times x plus 4 times 2x minus 1 times x plus 3, I get that long polynomial. That third factor is x plus 4. That side was at 14 points. Back side. Make sure to show all your work and box your answers. For question number 6, I didn't allow you guys to use a graphing calculator. So, in order to find my asymptotes, okay, I take the vertical, I take my denominator, set it equal, not equal to 0, and solve. I get x is not equal to 2. So my vertical asymptote is at 2, this pink line. What does it mean to label? You write a number here. The next thing is, because this quiz you guys did it in groups, I only graded one person. I basically graded the third person in the stack. Okay, you may not know what you were scored until you look at their work. So in order to do that, In order to do that, you're going to have to look at your own work and look at my work. Does that make sense? So look at your work, even though it's not graded, and make any changes. So that you can do a correction. Now, to find the horizontal asymptote, I'm going to take my exponents. X to the first over x to the first. When I compare those, I just need to simplify. So if I cancel those out, I'm left with 1 over 1, or y equals 1. Here is my horizontal asymptote, and here's me labeling equals to 1. Okay, now, this is where a lot of you guys lost a point. You don't have a table. The question is, how did you know where the graph goes? You could have guessed, or you could have cheated, or you knew it but were lazy and didn't write down a table. I pick numbers to the left of the vertical asymptote. The easiest number to the left of this 2 is 0. If I put in 0, 0, and 0, I get 0 minus 2 is negative 2. 0 divided by negative 2 is 0. So that tells me if it is at 0, then my graph goes through the origin. And that tells me that I'm going to actually graph it below and not above. The second thing I have is I picked a number to the right of my vertical asymptote, which is 3. If I put in 3 there, 3 over 3 minus 2, so 3 over 1, which is just 3. You can put a point there, 3, 3. That means it's positive, so it's going to go, or it's basically above 1. That means I'm going to put my graph above. Okay, so you were graded 3 points if you didn't have a table. You need to kind of prove to me where the graph's coming from. You got 2 points if you got one of the asymptotes correct, but your graph was wrong. That was out of 4 points. Question number 7. Divide using long division. 4x to the 4th plus 6x to the 3rd plus 3x minus 1 divided by 2x squared plus 1. A lot of students had right answers but not correct work. You got points off for that for the rest of the quiz. If I write down this polynomial, I need to have a placeholder because I'm missing the 0x squared. And I'm doing the same thing. How many times does 2x squared go into 4x to the 4th? That's 2x squared. Now pay attention. All you do is just multiply or distribute through. 4x to the 4th, 2x squared. Well, you don't put 2x squared here because they're not like terms. Does that make sense? Now I'm just going to subtract going down. 0 minus 2 gives me negative 2x squared, and this term just falls down. Then I'm thinking, how many times is 2x squared going to 6x to the 3rd? That's 3x. 3x times 2x squared gives me 6x to the 3rd. 3x times 1 gives me 3x. Now I brought this one down as well. And now I'm subtracting. Remember, when they're exactly the same, it's equal to 0. So that cancels. This one cancels, and I just have to bring down this one. I now have two terms, negative 2x squared and negative 1. How many times does 2x squared go into that? That's negative 1. Multiply, remainder of 0. And your answer is 2x squared plus 3x minus 1. That was out of 4 points. If you just wrote up here like 2x squared and the rest of that was wrong, or you have a remainder, I gave you guys 2 points. Question number 8. The worst thing on your group quiz is if someone has it all correct and the person I graded and got it marked off. For question number 8, it says find all the zeros of the polynomial function. Notice how I don't give you any hints. I don't give you any x-intercepts. I don't give you any zeros. Now, this problem says find all the zeros. I'll explain that at the very end. So you should be using the rational root theorem. I'm taking the factors of 16 over the factors of 1. Remember, they're both plus or minus. Use synthetic division. 1, negative 6, 1, 24, and 16. I tested out 1, and I got a remainder, so this is not a factor. I tested negative 1. I get a remainder of 0. That means that this is a factor. That's why I circled it. And I have this left over, 1, negative 7, 8, and 16. That means 1 degree less than this. Plus, what's 1 degree less than x to the 4th? X to the 3rd. So I'll have 1x third minus 7x squared plus 8x plus 16. Well, pay attention. You're like, Mr. Ng, I don't know how to factor this. It's a polynomial of 4 degrees, and it's not factorable by grouping. Well, guess what? You can still use the rational roots there. I can still pick one of these numbers in here and see if you get a remainder of 0. Well, if you picked 4, 1 times 4, negative 12, add down, negative 4, 4 times negative 16. This is what I want. This is telling me that negative 1 and 4 are both factors. I'm left with 1, negative 3, and 4. That becomes 1x squared, negative 3x, minus 4. Well, I have a quadratics, and I can just factor that. If I factor this, I get x plus 1 and x minus 4. But remember, this does not mean x plus 4. This means x minus 4. So here's one of those. Here's one over here. Remember, that does not say x minus 1. You set that equal to 0 to get x equals negative 1. Here's the other one. And over here. Now, if you wrote quantity x plus 1 times x plus 1 times x minus 4 or x minus 4, you got 3 points. If you wrote as an answer give zeros and you wrote negative 1 and 4, you only got 2 points. The reason why, think about it, a degree of polynomial 4 means how many zeros, class? You should have 4 numbers. So if you write just these 2, you're missing 1. Well, where does it come from? Now, the next thing that you probably miss points on, it says find all the zeros. These are not zeros. These are binomials. These are factors. I could have asked you the question, factor the polynomial. You would get this as your answer. It's saying find the zeros. Where does it cross the x-axis? It crosses the x-axis when you use the zero product rule and you solve each of those. I get negative 1, 4, negative 1, and 4. Now, the reason why I did not accept multiplicity of 2 is because you have to define it. You have to explain what it is. The reason why is because in this quiz, in the next question, there is a multiplicity of 2, and that does not imply you know what it means. So again, you can see how I tested all the other numbers, and I don't have a remainder of 0. Question number 9. Write a polynomial function of minimum degree in standard form with real coefficients whose zeros are 2. And this 2 has a multiplicity of 2, and 3 plus I. Well, 3 plus I has a conjugate. 3 plus I, its conjugate is 3 minus I. Okay, I have 2 zeros so far. Multiplicity of 2 means if I set x equal to 2, remember you're solving a set equal to 0, you're trying to get to 0, that means the binomial or factor is x minus 2, and multiplicity means, if I underline in red, that means I have 2 of them. If you multiply x minus 2 times x minus 2, you'll get x squared minus 4x plus 4. Over here, remember you have that minus sign, don't forget to distribute. I have x minus 3 minus I times quantity x minus 3 plus I. 3 times 3, you have a box of 9. This is my box of 9 here. Oh, sorry. No, this one over here. When I multiply these two together, and you combine like terms there, you'll get x squared minus 6x plus 10. If I graded your paper, I wrote a little check. And if you got that far, I gave you 3 points. I gave you 2 points if you just thought this was a degree 3. 1, 2, 3. And you missed the idea of the multiplicity and an underline. Essentially, I'm going to take those two and multiply them. Multiply and combine like terms. and then you'll get an answer of x to the fourth minus 10x to the third, 38, x squared minus 64x plus 4. And that side was out of 16. And then whatever score you got, or the person I graded, that was the score that everyone else got on their group. So if you write just these two, you're missing one. Well, where does it come from? Now, the next thing that you probably missed points on, it says find all the zeros. These are not zeros. These are binomials. These are factors. I could have asked you the question, factor the polynomial. You would get this as your answer. It's saying find the zeros. Where does it cross the x-axis? It crosses the x-axis when you use the zero product rule and you solve each of those. I get -1, 4, -1, and 4. Now, the reason why I did not accept multiplicity of 2 is because you have to define it. You have to explain what it is. The reason why is because in this quiz, in the next question, there is a multiplicity of 2, and that does not imply you know what it means. So again, you can see how I tested all the other numbers, and I don't have a remainder of 0. Question number 9. Write a polynomial function of minimum degree in standard form with real coefficients whose zeros are 2. And this 2 has a multiplicity of 2, and 3 plus I. Well, 3 plus I has a conjugate. 3 plus I, its conjugate is 3 minus I. Okay, I have 2 zeros so far. Multiplicity of 2 means if I set x equal to 2, remember you're solving a set equal to 0, you're trying to get to 0, that means the binomial or factor is x minus 2, and multiplicity means, if I underline in red, that means I have 2 of them. If you multiply x minus 2 times x minus 2, you'll get x squared minus 4x plus 4. Over here, remember you have that minus sign, don't forget to distribute. I have x minus 3 minus I times quantity x minus 3 plus I. 3 times 3, you have a box of 9. This is my box of 9 here. Oh, sorry. No, this one over here. When I multiply these two together, and you combine like terms there, you'll get x squared minus 6x plus 10. If I graded your paper, I wrote a little check. And if you got that far, I gave you 3 points. I gave you 2 points if you just thought this was a degree 3. 1, 2, 3. And you missed the idea of the multiplicity and an underline. Essentially, I'm going to take those two and multiply them. Multiply and combine like terms. And then you'll get an answer of x to the fourth minus 10x to the third, 38, x squared minus 64x plus 4. And that side was out of 16. And then whatever score you got, or the person I graded, that was the score that everyone else got on their group.